Hey everyone, this is Andrew. Welcome to Atomo. It's Friday, December 9th. Happy Friday. We're still here. We're not glowing. We're doing Chablis tonight. And no, it's not a wine tasting vlog, but I do have a Chablis Premier Cru from the Mortmain uh, Clement in Chablis, a Jean-Marc Brocard. So, cheers. Happy Friday. Let's take a look here. Um, what I want to do or talk about tonight is Federal Reserve. Now, the aggressive rate hikes have been going on since, gosh, what was it, February that they started? And here in Canada, the Bank of Canada has been following suit. So is the Bank of Canada or the Federal Reserve your enemy? Okay, so especially those that like 2008 was a wasn't done very well. So what do I mean by not done very well? What happened is when the bank failures started, the Federal Reserve jumped in to save the banks. What you have here is you have the Federal Reserve, which should be neutral in these sort of endeavors, um, basically saying, okay, well, you took risks, something happened, you blow up, goodbye. That's it. You're done. Except what they did is they picked winners and losers, or once they caught on to the systemic problems that were happening, jumped in pretty quickly to fix the problem. Now, hindsight's 2020. If we look at the New York banks as I mentioned this in the other videos as a faction, so we don't look at just say the United States particularly or Canada. The banking systems between the United States and Canada are not completely segregated. Three of the big banks of the six primary banks here in Canada have access to the Fed discount window. They're connected up. I think that's the Toronto Dominion, Scotia Bank, and possibly Royal Bank RBC. The last one, I'm not too sure without going and looking it up, but that's what I think. Definitely, I'm sure TD and Scotia Bank do, unless something's changed in a while. So older information in my head because I looked at this, back in 2009, 2010. Yeah, I might be a little out of date. Anyhow, so in those days of 2008, 2009, we're still connected to the LIBOR system. So it's possible that if there was a systemic collapse, that you might have had the European banks find a foothold on the throats of the New York banks that possibly would have been laid low. A lot of that's their problem too. That brings us to now. Now things are a little bit different. No longer are the New York banks beholden to LIBOR, the bank rate setting system in Europe, in the UK. There's SOFR now, and the SOFR system allows for the banks here in North America to be able to set their repo rates, their ability for them to trade collateral with each other. So this is important because it takes away a leverage point that Europe used to use quite a bit. Well, it was the only thing that you could use to set your banking rates. So that now has changed. That's out of play. So with the aggressive Fed rate hike increases happening, we look at, well, what's the possible risk to banks? Well, is it possible that housing, mortgages, and loans are going to pull the whole system down? Probably not. If that were the case, then you'd probably hear a lot more squealing from the banks as the rates went up and up and up. And you're not hearing the squealing from any of the banks on that vector. Seems that the banks are in North America well capitalized. I think they've had time to load their cannons to make sure that their balance sheets are better for what's coming up. And they've had quite a bit of time to plan, especially after 2008, 2009. And most likely once J-Pow got into the game. No, J-Pow really has nothing to prove. I think he's worth $150 million. Somebody can fact check me on that. I have no problem with that. Doesn't really have anything to prove. It doesn't look like he can be bought. He's he's looks like to be the true patriot. So here's how it might play out: is as the rates are increasing, it puts strain or it starts to pull money, the offshore dollars, out of the systems that are abroad. As that happening, you got the upside down money pyramid where you have a small bit of good money that sits at the focal point, and then other money is generated on top of that money. So the credit that you get to buy a car or to buy a house from a bank is, it's not somebody deposits $100,000 and you take a loan out for $100,000 and the bank puts interest on, for the cost of that money. So that somebody puts $100,000 in, it's possible that the bank has $1 million that they can lend out because they understand that, okay, well, nobody's going to make a call for all that $100,000. So most of it, like, back in the day when you used to have gold sitting in the vaults, then what happened is some of the not so scrupulous gold changers would write more script for more gold than what was actually in the vault, because really nobody's going to come back and claim all of it at once. No, it's not going to happen. So the banks work in this way as well. And if you got $500,000 mortgage, you're not going to go back. That's just going to dribble back in over time. And if you have enough of these, well, then you have an asset that's running and it's producing money back into that system. So with the Federal Reserve raising rates, and think, okay, well, what's the terminal rate? At what point are they going to stop? I think a lot of that's on people's minds. From some conversations or watching a lady by the name of Danielle DiMartino Booth, she's putting some clues on the table that, well, perhaps what's happening is you want to do a clean out of, you have like true banking, vanilla banking stuff, like doing mortgages, taking deposits. Then there's another banking system, the non-banking system, where you have other entities that are, like, for example, if we take a stable coin, not Bitcoin specifically, but if we create these other types of coins, and fund those coins, just say with US dollars, then I'm creating kind of a banking conglomerate that's it's not necessary within the purview of the actual banks. And so a lot of these instruments can be created where I can maybe issue my own private credit to customers or have some sort of maybe loyalty program. I'm just kind of making stuff up that's like not within a banking context, but there's something with a financialization of items that are out there in the system, but there does require an underpinning of actually having money for these things to operate. And so if I wanted to run a Ponzi scheme where people put money into my system, they get some sort of benefit, but that requires more people to be entering into the system. Well, if you pull the bottom rung and rip that money out, then once the others up the chain catch wind of that, then that whole thing starts to unravel and comes apart. So leveraged loans, the ability to take maybe people who, okay, you want to buy that car, but your credit's really bad. Well, then I can get you a subprime type mortgage, and I'll do it through my own little lending house. Got some money that I can play with. Just say I got $20 million or something. I can lend some of that out. And I'm going to do it at a very high interest rate because people I'm working with are very risky. Okay. But if I then build this huge enterprise up and just say issue bonds or something on this and then give you a high yield, because you have to look at like pension funds, for example, where, well, I can't get yield on treasuries because treasuries are not paying enough. If the treasury yield's going really, really high, that means something's going wrong with the USA. What you find is I was looking at this a while ago with a mutual fund. Well, I should have done it, but I was wondering. There was a mutual fund where it was investing in the higher risk Southern European countries, and it paid a really good premium. I thought, wow, I should put some in there, and just because they're getting bailed out, it's like, how could you lose? So that was a bit of a missed opportunity, but I managed the Fed put in other ways by buying a lot of tech stocks. So no financial advice here, not giving financial advice. No financial advice, no medical advice, no election fornication, none of that stuff here. Just taking this for entertainment. Yeah. Okay, so you have these markets, and what can happen is when this additional money gets magnified. So just say Federal Reserve puts money into Europe, for example, and they start to build financial industries based off of those offshore US dollars. And then these people start to take on an anti-American agenda. I think the Davos crowd, build back better, the environmental activists, they're like the really hardcore ones that are building up their war chest on top of US dollars. Now, what if we start to create some magnetism for the US dollars and want them to go back to the USA through virtue of the rate raising? The Federal Reserve went first. This is you're going to see a lot of going first. So what do I mean by that? The Ukraine conflict. The Ukrainians were setting up to go and take the Donbass areas in Crimea back. They were building up troops for that. Russia just went first and just beat them to the punch. So the battlefield was set. Just Russia picked the time to go. Federal Reserve raising rates. Something is set for Europe to make a move. Federal Reserve got there first and started to raise rates. So when there's a lot of disruption on the table, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. When there's a high amount of VUCA in play, you can't over analyze the situation. You can't sit back, stroke your chin and say, okay, well, I could do this, and I could, I could move some money over here. I can industrialize these things, build these commodities, set up some green stuff over here, fund some politicians to get some legislation through, and then tabletop and paper, do it on paper. You actually have to put it in play. So the only way to solve VUCA style problems is you try something and see what the result is and adapt really fast. You set up a plan, do, check, adjust cycle. We plan it out, but then we actually do it. Then we check, okay, what the heck just happened? Do a retrospective on it and say, okay, well, let's implement the next round, get that set up, throw that into the planning cycle, plan it up, do it, and try to get that cycle going as fast as possible. Sets up a feedback flywheel. Okay, and you get that by really making a move. So is the Federal Reserve going to pull back on the rates? Well, they're most likely going to slow down the size of the increases. Probably not going to see about a lot of 75 basis point hits coming up. That might mean that looks like Bank of Canada is playing with this as well. So 2023, there's an expectation that there's around between 5 and 7% is what we should be looking at for terminal rates. Possibly around 6. The reason for that is you might hear on the boob tube analysts saying, "Oh no, it's gonna like maybe there'll be one more and then that's it. We're just gonna let it ride for a while." Possibly, if they get a whiff that there's still a lot of excess money in the system, they might start poking rates up a bit more. The other thing about pumping up rates is in the zero interest rate or getting close to the zero bound economy, what then happens is with so much money sloshing around the system, you can see companies that come into play that are basically zombie companies. They're producing no value. And a lot of these tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, not necessarily Google per se, but the social media ones, Snapchat, maybe TikToks, that once the price of money starts to go up, then to capitalize new endeavors starts to become more expensive. And if these companies are not producing solid value as the rates rise and people's disposable income goes down, they might not be advertising on these platforms, especially businesses that are feeling the pinch that their customers are not showing up as much anymore, not spending as much anymore. Then what can happen is these companies will have to look at, okay, well, what is just essential for us to live? It turns into an existential crisis for some of these companies. And then they may have to shutter or go away. That's a good thing. We want companies that are not producing value to die and not be walking zombies. So when the pandemic hit and there was a lot of shutdowns, there's even Nike making the shoes, turn around saying, "Oh, we need a bailout." Like, really, bailout? I think if you're mismanaged to that point, then restructure. Take a look at your loans and financings. Cut areas of the business that don't make sense. Think about it that way. I'm surprised that Elon Musk cut out so many employees from Twitter. I'm getting a sense that a lot of them were moving levers within the back ends of the machine in order to do, because there's the Twitter files are coming out now, and you're seeing the type of back end tools and shenanigery that was built into the system. Oh, we can shadow ban these people, we can shut down these trending uh, tweet areas or these hashtags. We can shut these people down so they don't show up in your search results. Um, and it takes a lot of people power behind the scenes to monitor all the stuff that's going on and shut these down. So it makes me wonder, that's probably not all funded by advertisers. I'd like to see more Twitter files that show, okay, well, how is Twitter actually financed, and were specific people being paid off to go in and pull certain tools, so you could have like subdomains of people within areas of the company, that if you go knock knock knock, hey, my competitor's doing this and I'm one of your best advertisers, can you like take care of that problem? And it's probably like, sure, ching, here's your invoice, a little under the table something, and I'll go take care of that. So maybe this is wild conjecture, but let's wait and see. Oh yeah, throw $15,000 at your favorite group within Twitter on top of your ad spend, and they will make your competition a little less competitive. Uh, so let's wait to see what happens on that front. So the point that I'm making here is that a company like that with so much bloat, where you can remove the sheer amount of employees that Elon has removed, just means that there's been even YouTube videos, or in I think a Project Veritas one, saying, and one engineer's like, yeah, just 4 hours a week. Others like, oh my God, I'm so hurt. Um, President Trump made a tweet. Now I got to take a week off. That hurt my feelings. Like, okay, okay, go, go, go. It's like, no, that's what zero interest rates do, is you have these companies and the work ethic just goes to crap. When the work ethic goes to crap, yeah, the company can't survive like that. That's like cancer within the company. People have to be providing something of value that is in excess of what they're getting paid. Like that's why we have skill sets and competencies. Is you the skill set and competency becomes important, and it is good to have a hierarchy of competencies. You don't just hire people in through virtuistic elements, like, oh, Andrew doesn't have any hair and he has glasses, don't hire him, he's the devil. It's like that sort of mentality. um no, it's people who can really get stuff done and make an impact within the company at far in excess of what they're getting paid. Doesn't mean that, oh, what do you mean, is this wrong, it's like exploiting the workers. Well, what capitalism does is, if you have a skill that you can leverage and supply to a company, that company is going to pay you a decent wage for that skill, then more people will acquire that skill because that's what the market's asking for. If you want me to go to a lake and cut out ice blocks and sell ice for people's ice boxes, it's not a skill that's required anymore. We've evolved beyond that. So ice block companies, when refrigeration came in, they went out of business. Sure, it's like, well, we cut this great ice and it's not contaminated with electricity and other evil stuff that's floating through your refrigerator. You need pure, good, honest ice from Mother Nature. I'm sure that arguments went out. You see that all the time when a company is going to die. They'll start lashing out. Well, you want companies to die so that if the skill set that was used for the company is no longer needed, well, then the demand for it will go down and less people will train in that, and they'll train in other skills that are quite necessary. So I think this is a part of a reason why the Federal Reserve needs to keep rates going up and going high, is to break some of this stuff. And at the other side of the fence, that politicians are removing gates and barriers for people to start new businesses. Cost push inflation is what we're looking at here. And when costs get really high, well, that creates the fields for people to go out, and metaphorically fields for people to go out to use their skills and to create new businesses that will be in competition with the businesses that have the high prices, so that more of the goods can be provided at lesser price, and then they'll attract customers. So if you're going to produce coal for, you know, $200 a ton, and I'm going to do it for $108 a ton, then I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that part of the market share. If I can do it and stay in business for doing that, great. Easy to do. A lot of gatekeeping on it. Coal is dirty, so environmental assessments and all that. And it costs a lot of money to get that up and running. There may be other areas where people can jump in and start businesses, and by having, a high interest rate, then you have to be very you have to think about the business that you want to start. This is a good white pill. This is very important for a capitalistic society, is to have the kind of the cleaning out, like the forest burning, to clean out the old dead scrub and stuff so that new life can regenerate. And that gives a chance for younger people to get into the action, especially if we do have an amount of gatekeeping removed, so that it's easy for new businesses to start up and potentially fail, but we want that to be done quickly. So just in closing here, in this little Friday night talk, is yes, raising of interest rates is going to be painful. The companies and organizations that have been in play for so long that are not providing value, or that are getting rickety and creaky, you're not on the game as much as they were, they need to take a hit. And when they take a hit, that allows other new ideas to come into play. It can actually create a renaissance. The zombies go away, and the space that the zombies were filling is no longer filled anymore. It creates this openness for others to come in to show what they can actually produce and do within the world, to build that next group of leaders, to build maybe the new Bezos or Elon Musks, whoever they might be coming up. Because the world definitely needs this. We need technological innovation. We need to move forward. That means you have to disrupt the buttresses that hold up the old crusty people in power, to change those dynamics, and to create, bountiful harvests and bountiful new ideas. So this is a Tomo, and then a miracle occurred, and this is the miracle that we're looking for. Not that I'm simping for the Fed here, or the Bank of Canada, but when the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and my enemy is the communist governments come into play and do massive centralization. Don't want that. That stifles any sort of innovative capacity. It sets up tyranny. It pits people against people, neighbor against neighbor, family against family. Ultimately, just look at the 20th century, rerun some of those experiments, and you saw the body count go quite high. What do you mean by body count? Yeah, well, look, Maoist revolution, Lenin, Stalin, Pol Pot, and those are great ideas. Great, let's bring the people together. Power to the people. And no, you have to say that the United States experiment has been the greatest experiment probably in recorded history. And too bad it's rotting from the head down. Hopefully, there's one senator that changed seats, so to an independent. Hopefully, maybe there's more that can break the stranglehold, and perhaps start to look at some of these problems, kind of get back to, in some way, a more traditional way of doing things, of hard work, grit, determination, get rid of the corruption as much as you can. Nobody riding on coattails, that just need to put in good, honest work and get rewarded for it. That's going to create more opportunities. So it's happy Friday night, Andrew from Atomo. Have a good one.